Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to FOBtv, the future of business, where we explore the forces shaping tomorrow. Now, I'm your host, Kevin Benedict. I'm a futurist and lecturer here at TCS. And again, I want to welcome everyone to the program today. We're talking a lot in this series about automobile manufacturing. It's getting ready for this season of big events around automotive. And so I thought we could roll with this automotive manufacturing series, having a lot of fun. So our guest today, who's going to help us make sense of this evolving landscape of automotive manufacturing, is John Dougherty. John, thanks for joining us.
Excellent, Kevin. Very happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to do this today.
Absolutely. Now, John is head of manufacturing for the Americas at ServiceNow. And we'll talk about ServiceNow here in a moment. So those that aren't familiar with that, we'll give them a little bit of a background. Where are you calling in today from, John?
Well, Kevin, right now I'm in a very cold Chicago, but Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I call home. So I'm on my last business trip of the season. So
all right. That's a good feeling, isn't it?
It is. Oh, my God. You circle that on the calendar. You say, OK, that's the last one. Then we go into the holidays. So,
oh, man, I love it. I love it. So tell us what an average day looks like for you.
Oh, man. Average day is usually waking up about 3:30 a.m. You get picked up by about 5. You're on the first flight wherever you're going, whether it be New York City, Chicago. They always tell you as a good traveler, you try to take that first flight because you have a good chance of not getting canceled or delayed. So, and then it's phone calls, a lot of customer meetings. I would say about 80-90% of my days are customer meetings, talking about all the great things we're doing at ServiceNow and talking about, automotive industry is one of our 4 subverticals we cover, but that's a big part of it. And then, then you wind the day up, with a quick dinner, maybe answering emails, and you go to bed and you do it all over again tomorrow. So the drill.
I spent much of my career doing that schedule. Mine's a little bit softer than that now. I get to spend a little bit more time researching and writing and doing podcasts now.
Oh, so that's my goal, Kevin. I want to get there one day. You're my idol right now. So
that's awesome. Well, let's talk about ServiceNow, John, because some people don't know ServiceNow. I've watched, I think, from the inception of ServiceNow. I know lots of people that have worked at ServiceNow. I see the signs when I'm driving through Silicon Valley of ServiceNow everywhere. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do, especially in automotive manufacturing.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, for the folks that don't know a lot about ServiceNow, Kevin, we really started back in 2004. Fred Luddy is the founder of ServiceNow, and he started the company as an IT ticketing tool system, and he wanted to make the world of work better for folks. And, he really started the company observing a person put, invoices in, AR invoices, and she was swivel chairing between multiple systems. And he's like, this is crazy. I got to find a better way I got to come up with a better bread box for these people because it was just driving or not. So, he started the company in 2004, IT ticketing, and we have greatly increased. I came on board right in the pandemic year 2000 and when the manufacturing vertical. So we've greatly increased. And automotive, to answer your question directly, automotive falls underneath one of our 4 sub verticals. And I got to tell you, it was one of our focus areas for 2025. It's going to be a huge focus area for us for 2026, because you and I are going to talk about quite a few topics. But, the EV market, we've made this huge switch. A lot of the companies are going from this combustion engine to the EV side. And now with a lot of what Donald Trump's doing, like the EV side subsided. And now it seems like the pendulum's switching back to combustion and autonomous type vehicles. And it's a crazy market right now, crazy times.
Oh, absolutely. I never would have imagined that individuals could just turn on and off EVs in the EV industry. And it's interesting times. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Kevin, you're starting to see like self-driving vehicles like Waymo, like you go to San Francisco and nobody's behind the wheel of the car, right? And you're going to the airport. The trust factor's off the charts. So
I know, I love it. So maybe this question predates you, but when you look back over the last 10 years of automotive manufacturing, or what you've known about it, what's changed the most? What have you seen that change? And if not 10 years, give me 5 years. What have you seen that's really changing in the industry?
Yeah, I think that's like my sweet spot because I've been doing this job for 30 years. So I've
Yeah.
seen a
Okay.
great amount when I first started doing consulting way back in 1996. A lot of automotive manufacturers with Ford, GM facilities I've been in across the board. But, what I think the biggest thing I've seen across the industry is this great transition to a lot of automation. It's Henry Ford on steroids, from that perspective. So it's automation. And then the big thing, that is across our industry is just the advent of artificial intelligence and trying to do more with less and trying to, help digitize a lot of these. When I started 30 years ago, it was a lot paper based out on the shop floor, like, paper based work orders, paper based manuals on how to do the work. And from that perspective, so I've seen a great shift towards more autonomous and, a shift away from paper. How do we digitize a lot of the stuff? And then I think the other thing, which has been absolutely crazy, is 3D manufacturing and printing of parts. I mean, that has greatly shifted. And I've gone through, the last thing I would tell you is I've gone through just in time, the Toyota production system, nearshoring, offshoring. Now we're coming back to nearshoring. So, I mean, it's just, because the thing is with the EV market, a lot of folks may notice, it may not, but there's a considerably less amount of parts on a electric vehicle versus a combustion engine. So it's also, how do I do supply chain rationalization, resilience? We're going to get into all those topics today, but those are the major things: more automation, AI, like I said, 3D printing, and then, last but not least is nearshoring and the
Yes.
supply chain piece.
So let's talk about 3D printing there for a moment.
Yeah.
Are they doing that at scale now, or do they do that as just exceptions?
No, that's a great question. It's really moving towards at scale from that perspective. I mean, when I first saw it, it was more just, one off, and because the technology really wasn't there. So people were sort of really grappling with it, but it has greatly changed the way products are designed. I mean, it's just sped up the whole market. It's like new product development. It's really sped up that whole side of the business from that side. And then also like economies of scale. I mean, you could, 3D printing, the technologies, like I mentioned, has greatly increased, and you can actually now do a lot more parts in a shorter amount of time.
Now, do they do production parts or just for simulations and testing?
Actually, both. Because if you take a look at the sort of by the time a automobile goes from concept to full production is anywhere from 4 to 7 years. So there's multiple iterations on that vehicle from a 3D printing standpoint. You might have a part that might went in version 1.0 of the vehicle, and now we're up to version 7 or version 10, and the design has greatly changed from that perspective. So
yeah, it just occurred to me that every concept car I see, I want to buy, but it never comes out into production because they've rounded all the corners, and they take away the space edge, the spacey version of it, and give you a production version that's much less interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned we're heading into automotive season, so the Detroit Auto Show, and then we have the auto show come to Pittsburgh in February. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we go there. My son's eyes, he's like, Dad, look at the cool new Mustang. It's coming out of the new Ford F-150. From that perspective, and then you might not even see that car show up on the showroom. For it may not even happen, but it might take them another 2 years, right? So,
wow. So cars themselves, they just seem to increasingly be computers on wheels, with the notion of software-defined vehicles and all that. Tell us a little bit about that. How does that change the way automobile manufacturers design and build things? And what do you guys do in that space?
Yeah, I absolutely love that question because we are really engaged. I will tell you, probably for the past 2 years, major areas that this software-defined vehicle piece has really grown some legs. And I will tell you fundamentally what it has changed as these vehicles become much more sophisticated. I mean, if you take a look at these vehicles now, they're almost roving entertainment centers, with everything that's going on inside of them. So they've become much more sophisticated. But for a vehicle manufacturer, from the design process, the thing that they're struggling the most with is, how do I take the diagnostics off of the vehicle and not only drive new service models, like Tesla really pioneered this. Like, for instance, your Tesla tells you when it needs service even before you think it needs service.
Yeah.
And it goes and schedules the appointment for you. And, from that perspective, so it's taken the whole human element out of it from that side of it. So the amount of data that these cars are collecting, it's car companies are trying to figure out, how do I take that and build that back into the design process, but also the manufacturing process, and what does that mean for my supply chain? Because they're all dominoes in the order. A lot of folks looked at that very linear, but now it's starting to become very circular from that perspective. So it's really changing that. And the other topic I know we're going to cover is just the cybersecurity.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a huge cybersecurity concern because these vehicles are now on the internet, right? So, I mean, when they do the software downloads, so that cybersecurity piece is huge concern for automotive companies.
So what are they doing about it? Let's just jump right into that question right now. What's changed and how do they protect the vehicle and the passengers?
That's a huge piece to it. So, one of the things is how quickly, and this is where ServiceNow is really helping out in that perspective, is how quickly can they get the software downloads into the vehicle and make sure that they're done correctly. So, when you do the software download, it doesn't like crash the vehicle or cause a safety concern or an injury, because that's the last thing you want to see from a car manufacturing standpoint, is the software download causes some problems. And you're seeing a lot of these car companies are really struggling with this because there's a lot of recalls. Like, I think Ford just went through a big recall, and I think Toyota had a big recall just around some of the software that's been downloaded. So, we're doing a lot of work, taking a look at not only the software that's going on the vehicle, but also the cybersecurity concerns, the whole data encryption piece and authentication of sort of the person is driving the vehicle. And, there's a lot of work that we're doing, not only from the security, the risk standpoint, but also just, the design of the vehicles. The three main areas we're doing a lot of work in.
Wow. Yeah, I have a 2025 Toyota Tundra. And I just got a recall notice. Matter of fact, it's right here on my desk. The recall notice is for the backup rear view mirror.
Yes.
What's interesting there is that I think it's really cool. It's not a mirror anymore. It's actually a camera in the rear view mirror. So you're looking at a digital camera where the rear view mirror was. So you're seeing the screen right there, but it's having problems. So sometimes when you're backing up, it just disappears.
Yeah,
you don't see what's behind you. And so that's an example of replacing something like a mirror, which works every time, with something cool, which is a digital camera, but it flickers and sometimes doesn't work.
Yeah, so you're like my son. He has a Toyota Tundra also, and that's a huge recall. And one of the big things that Toyota is struggling with across the board, going to your point earlier, is making sure that when you sending the recall out is probably, that's one part of the process.
Yeah.
But making sure you have the inventory and then scheduling the customer, those are three things. And then the bottom line is who's paying for that, underneath that, because that's not free. There's no free lunch here on that recall of your Tundra. When you got to bring it in, they got to replace the camera, right?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of time on everybody's part there.
Yeah.
So I looked at when you graduated from college, and you graduated the same year as I did. Who would have thought, John, that you and I are spending the sunset years of our career talking about AI?
Oh, my goodness gracious. I got to tell you, you and I have seen so many technology advancements come and go since. Since
the internet, the .com era, the housing boom, and then everything that's digital transformation, mobility. And here we are with AI.
Oh my God, Kevin, you can't go anywhere nowadays without having AI infused in some sort of the conversation. Like, Kevin, I'll share a real quick story, and I know not to take you off track here, but we had brunch yesterday, and the person carving my, ham at the carving station, and he overheard our AI conversation and talking about, sort of where we are. And he had a perspective on, he's like, I use AI every day of my life. And he goes, it's made a profound change. I mean, the guy's not even in supply chain. And here's a guy, not to belabor what he was doing, but, he's up to speed on what AI is doing, and it's making a profound effect in his life, he said. So
I know, man, we have to have an extra chair at the dinner table now because we have this new person, this chatty person who's sitting there answering all of our questions over dinner every day. It's like, well, ask Chatty, and let's see what she says or he says.
And Chatty's listening to your conversations and learning from you. Like, what do you talk about at the dinner table every night, and offering up suggestions of where to go on vacation and what to do this weekend, right?
We can't have any of these irrational family arguments anymore because they all get answered right away. Nope, you're wrong. She's right.
But Kevin, the big point of that is not to go off on a tangent on this, but the real thing that a lot of folks are struggling with is just the hallucinations through AI, right? And I'll give you a great example of this. My daughter was taking her finals about a year and a half ago for college, and she was using ChatGPT to do one of the math problems on the final. And she comes up with one answer, and I said, Ryan, that's incorrect. I said, go and do it manually the way you were taught, and I bet she'd come up with a different answer. And lo and behold, she did, and thank God she did, because she probably would have got it wrong on the final. So it's just, that's something we got to keep in track. Is it's good, but it's not perfect right now.
Yeah, understood. As much as we can laugh at some of the things or hallucinations that AI does, is playing a huge role in automobile manufacturing today. Talk to us about that. What are you seeing out there?
Oh, my goodness gracious. I will tell you that from an AI perspective, that a lot of folks are utilizing it within these connected worker. Like, I will tell you, the numbers are varying across the board of the skills gap, right? I mean, this started to happen around the pandemic, but one of the things is you have like a newer workforce versus an older workforce. And, you and I, when we were going through college, you had that person who was at a job for 20, 30 years, and how to fix something or solve a problem was in their head. And God forbid if that person got hit by a bus. Well, hey, now from that perspective, if, a newer person doesn't have that sort of skill background, they can go in there and actually, query and start to find out what the answer is, but then apply that human element, say, hey, is that math problem wrong? Or did it compute something wrong? But it gets you at least maybe over the 50-yard line, it gets you, maybe into the red zone, but, there's still that human element to it across the board. So I think AI is really with the skills gap piece, and it's really helped with automating a lot of the factories, like from a sustainability standpoint, and driving costs out of the business. A lot of folks are trying to apply it to the business.
So let's talk about your ServiceNow. How's AI, what function and what role does it play in what you guys are delivering?
Yeah, if you hear anything from the ServiceNow perspective, there's three things that we try to talk to every customer about, and this has really dominated this past year. And we put it into three buckets. There is the AI bucket, there's the data bucket, and then there's the workflow bucket. And those are all very important. And we methodically thought about why we put data in the middle. And folks are really struggling with the data governance piece. Yes, they think they can get to the AI side, but that without the data piece in the middle and collecting the data, understanding the data and what's trying to tell them, you can't move to these AI agents, which is dominating the market, which is, again, actually helping do the work. And then on the other side is the workflows, which ServiceNow has absolutely knocked out of the park since 2004. But without understanding the data in the middle and data governance, that is absolutely critical. And we're doing a lot with Workflow Data Fabric and a lot of our AI products of like not only culling the data, what is the data telling you, but then using it as a jump off point into the AI agents, and then also the workflows piece.
So is the data part of it the obstacle slowing down a lot of implementations?
Yes, I will tell you that this is the second year in a row we've done this study with Oxford Economics, and we call it the AI Maturity Index. This year went out to about 5,000 companies across multiple verticals, and the four we sent it out to was automotive, heavy industry, chemicals and specialty metals, and CPG. And the score is on a 0 to 100 of how mature you feel you are to move to an AI model in your business. In 2024, the average score was 44. This year, it slipped about 9 points, and everybody is really concerned about the data piece. They don't feel that they're mature enough. Their data is scattered because of all these siloed systems that they're using, and AI hasn't really given them the promise and the return on investment. And it's because people are really worried about the data piece. It's sitting in the middle. So we're a little bit concerned about that. That's why we put a lot of effort around the data piece and understanding where people are and trying to give them a path to get there.
And the data is the obstacle because that's what you would use to train on LLM on a specific task.
Yes, that is correct. And, the data is, going back to the automotive world. I mean, talking about that's really driving product design. It's driving, production. It's driving the supply chain. This data is coming in multiple different ways. It's coming in different multiple modals, and folks are really struggling with this. It's great to stick it into a data warehouse, but then how do you sort of drive action off of that data? And that's where AI is really intended to do this, but without having that data governance piece in the middle. And that's the big piece, is that data governance piece. That's what folks are really struggling with.
Now let's talk about smart factories. Smart factories have sensors everywhere. They're feeding digital twins that allow somebody and analytics and AI and people, humans, to really look at what's going on, to simulate different things that are trying to accomplish, to save time and see if it works through simulation before having to build the whole system out. All of this stuff. What are you seeing out there? What is the maturity of that process, and what role do you guys play in that whole process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will tell you that I have seen a great uptick, but we are not near perfect on a smart factory. Industry 4.0 has really driven a lot of this. But if you take a look at a definition of a smart factory, it has to be digital, it has to be connected, and it has to be adaptive. Those are the three elements that really make up a smart factory. And, folks might have the digital part, but they might not have the adaptive part. The reason being is some of these factories are maybe over, 50, 60 years old. Yeah. And folks can't go in there and actually change the layout of the building without having these large CapEx projects. So they're really struggling. And then that sort of leads to the other issue, of the high cost and little return, so that's why folks are really struggling with trying to get what those three main elements make up the smart factory. So what we're trying to do is we're going in and trying to figure out how can we get folks as close to nirvana as possible, with either our AI technologies or, can the workflows do something better along the lines within the business? Can we streamline your processes? One of the tools we have is a process mining workshop that we do, where we go in and take a look at the current processes and tell you where we can actually pick up efficiencies and what you can do. And we do these, sort of mini pilots, 4 to 6 weeks, and bring our consultants in, and folks like me have done 30 years and try to help you sort of streamline this and figure out what's the best path forward.
So we've all been hearing about robots, especially in automotive manufacturing, for probably 40, 50 years when they first started putting those heavy duty robotic arms with cages around them, doing welds and painting and a few things like that. But how have they matured? Where do you see them today, and where do you think they'll be 10 years from now?
Wow, that's a great question. I have seen the technology greatly increase from the robotics side. I think we're just getting better. I mean, I'm from Pittsburgh, and we have Carnegie Mellon, one of the best universities across the board for robotics in the country. And I think the technology is just getting better and better and better. That's the other thing with a smart factory. I think there has been a lot, probably since the pandemic and, the great resignation. Like, the pandemic really has driven this, but you're seeing companies, particularly in the automotive industry, trying to fill that skills gap by going more with robotics across the board to actually automate a lot of their processes. And that's one of the key things, is trying to move towards that smart factory. The robotics and the automation is a key tenet of that. But I mean, I've been absolutely blown away with some of these things I've seen, where folks go in, they set it up in the morning. They don't even set it up in the morning. It's actually running off programmatically, and they set it up and it's just churning parts out left and right. And someone's just standing there maintaining and watching, make sure everything's running correctly. I mean, it's been crazy. Like, for instance, I was in a factory in Ohio, and there was a massive factory. There was 10 people running the whole facility. 10 people, Kevin. And they told us at one point this facility used to have over 200 people running it, and they're down to 10 people. It's crazy.
Wow. So global supply chains have been through a lot since pandemic, tariffs, you name it. How are car manufacturers rethinking their networks today? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I will tell you one of the biggest things that the EV market has had, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, is the amount of parts that are on an EV versus a combustion engine.
Yeah.
And what this has caused auto manufacturers to do is, this has upended the supply chain because, you might have had a supplier you've dealt with for 20, 30 years. And now you have to go in there and sort of do that rationalization of what are going to be my 10 key suppliers going forward? Because, with the less amount of products and who can get it to you faster, better, cheaper along those lines, without reducing the quality or safety of the vehicle along those lines. So I will tell you that not only has the EV market had a profound effect on it, but sustainability. These sustainability initiatives like, trying to go carbon neutral by X number of years, this has really had a rationalization of the supply chain. And then what that causes is you now have to go through all these activities of onboarding new suppliers and offboarding old suppliers. And so that's a perfect example where ServiceNow is really coming in. I will tell you, we've driven a considerable amount of revenue off our supply chain products. And one of the major areas is just onboarding new suppliers and streamlining the collaboration to do that. Because in ERP systems, that's a very difficult process because it crosses over multiple departments. It's finance, procurement, manufacturing. Everybody has a say-so in it. And we're trying to streamline that process.
Wow. So finally, last question here, John. If we put on our Futurist hats, which I do every morning, but I'm asking you to do now, let's look at 2035. How do you think the world's going to be different, especially around automobile manufacturing? How will, if you open the door and look in a factory, how's it going to sound different, smell different, feel different?
Yeah. Oh man. You know what? I was so happy you asked me that question, because I'm getting that a lot. Like, hey, what's the futuristic? Because my job is to sort of look in the crystal ball and give folks, hey, what's coming down the path. There's a couple things I'm seeing, and I'm already starting to see this, across the board, whether it's Toyota, Ford, you name it. But they are really it's adaptive manufacturing. If you look at the old car facilities, like, the manufacturing line, it was very linear, right? As the car went down the line, Henry Ford, right? It was like, you put the engine in and then you put the side mirrors, the carpet. And so it went down the line. These newer, it's very adaptive because the cars are becoming very customized. So you don't see the car going down the line getting the same sort of parts put on it as it's going because each one of these vehicles are going to be customized. So it has to be very adaptive. And like I mentioned, you talked about like the automation piece, so like the robotics. Everybody is putting more and more robotics into the facilities. And more it's being driven by like AI. You and I have probably been in a million facilities, very noisy. The presses are banging out car parts left and right. Some of these facilities I walk in, you can hear a pin drop. I mean, just you hear the whir of the robotics, but not a lot of people yelling back and forth and on the production line. Very automated, very adaptive going forward. So I think you're going to start to continue to see that across the board. So,
John, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, pulling back the curtains of the ServiceNow world and sharing what you see in automobile manufacturing.
Yeah, very exciting times we live in right now.
So if you've enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, share, join us for more episodes. Thank you, everyone.